The most important event during this long history was the visit of Jesus Christ to America after his crucifixion, when he ministered and converted all the inhabitants. Dating problem going on there. Joseph Smith was directed by revelation from God, he claims, to restore the true church, which he claims he did in 1830. Apparently from the year of Christ's crucifixion until 1830, there was no true church and the truth about Jesus. He was visited several times, he says, by heavenly messengers who ordained him to a true priesthood. And he continued to have revelations from God to guide the church and to give more knowledge of the gospel. Many of these revelations are published in the book they call the Doctrines and Covenants. So they will offer you, the missionaries of the Book of Mormon. As you get more involved, there's also something called a Pearl of Great Price and the Doctrine and Covenants, which are also, I don't know if they're sacred, but they're basically sacred writings for the Mormons. Joseph Smith and his followers were continually persecuted for their religious beliefs, were driven from New York State to Ohio, then to Missouri, then to Illinois, where Joseph Smith was murdered in 1844 by a mob, a martyr for his beliefs, they'll tell you. The church was then led by Brigham Young, Joseph's successor, to Utah, where the Mormons have settled successfully. And of course, most of us know that Salt Lake City is the headquarters for Mormonism. The Latter-day Saints Church is led today by successors of Joseph Smith. The present president of the church is called the prophet, seer, and revelator, just as Joseph Smith was. And he guides the members of the church through revelations and through the guidance from God. The modern Latter-day Saints Church is, according to them, the only true church, as restored by God through Joseph Smith. Other churches, derived from the early Christian church, are in apostasy because their leaders corrupted the scriptures, changed the ordinances of the original church, and often led corrupt lives, thus losing their authority. By accepting baptism into the Latter-day Saints Church, you take the first step necessary towards your salvation, according to the Mormons, and your ultimate entrance into the kingdom of heaven, which they call the celestial kingdom. Now, that's what a Mormon will tell you. That's what they'll tell you when they come to the door. They have been well rehearsed, well versed in their scriptures, and they have been practicing from a very early age on how to do this. What's really fun is to get them off the script. The first time I offered this class, and by the way, most of this information comes from a website called transporter.com. And they do all sorts of work on different churches, especially Mormons. But anyway, so they had so Joseph Smith, that's what I'll tell you. Well, anyway, I was in Charleroi, my last parish, and I gave this class for the first time. And shortly after we finished the class, my Tuesday morning Bible study was meeting at Ann Canoni's house. Ann was this wonderful parishioner we had, and every Tuesday morning after the Tuesday morning Mass, we'd go over to her house and she'd have all sorts of wonderful little tea cakes and things like that. And we'd sit around her big kitchen table, about eight of us on a good day, maybe 10. And we would do a Bible study. And we did Revelation, and we did Gospels, and we did some Old Testament. And Ann was kind of an expert in the temple, and so she talked a lot about the tabernacle, and she had models of the tabernacle, and she had kind of built over the year. Really, she was very well versed that way. Well, shortly after offering this class, who comes to the door in the middle of our Bible study but two Mormon missionaries? So Ann goes to the door and invites them. She says, "We are in the middle of a Bible study right now. Would you like to join us?" Well, of course. They're thinking this is golden. People who always want to read the scripture. So they come walking in, and there I am in a collar, sitting at the table. I mean, that kind of... Anyway, so they asked at the beginning, they said, after we finish the Bible study, could we have a couple minutes to talk about another revelation of Jesus Christ in the Book of Mormon? And I said, well, sure, that'd be great. What was wonderful was that everybody in that Bible study had also taken the American Heresy class. And boy, when they finished their little spiel about the stuff I just told you, and it was funny, during the Bible study, they were not real good at Old Testament stuff. I was really surprised. We were studying Ezekiel at the time. What my people did was they got them off the script. And I don't think I've ever seen two missionaries try to get out of a house so quickly. I mean, we took down their name. First of all, what's your names again? It's on your name tag. We wrote them down because we're going to pray for you. And then we just started asking them questions that they either couldn't answer or didn't want to answer. And so it was very interesting to get them off the script. I'll tell you another story about Jehovah's Witnesses when we do them next week, I think. By the way, you don't have to worry about Jehovah's Witnesses ever coming to your house, because we're on the list. Dana's living in my old house, and I'm on the list. When I start bringing out the Greek New Testament for Jehovah's Witnesses, they put you on the list. They're not coming back. So, that's a whole other heresy altogether. Anyway, the problem is that what they give you as a history is probably what they've learned, and it's what they believe, and they have no idea otherwise, because they are forbidden to read anything that is critical about Mormonism. They are forbidden in order for their worthiness interview every year. One of the things that will be asked is, are you reading information that is critical of the Mormon Church? And so you certainly, most of them don't know this stuff. But first of all, the problem is that Joseph Smith was a huckster. Everything about him was fake. And I'm not saying that there isn't an opportunity for conversion. God certainly uses sinful people to bring out wonderful good things. The problem is he continued to be a huckster even after he claims all this sort of stuff happened. First of all, the first vision story in the form presented to you that Mormon missionaries will tell you about, that version of the story was unknown until 8 years after the publishing of the Book of Mormon, and 18 years after it occurred. The oldest version of the vision is in Smith's own handwriting, dating from 1832, and which is still 11 years after it happened, and says that only one person, Jesus Christ, appeared to him. It also mentions nothing about a revival in the area. It also contradicts the later account as to whether Smith had already decided that no church was true. Still, a third version of the event is recorded in a recollection in Smith's diary, 15 years after the alleged vision, where only one person appeared, specifically said that he was neither the Father nor the Son, and he was accompanied by many angels, which is not mentioned in the official version that the Mormons will tell you about. Which version's correct? Why was the event, now said by the church to be so important, on loan for so long? Why don't they tell that there were contradictions in his story? Careful study of the religious history of the area where Smith lived in the 1820s shows that, in fact, there was no revival going on that year in the area that he lived in, although he claims that he went to these revivals and then prayed about which one was true. Oh, and by the way, in 1828, 8 years after he said that he was told by God himself to join no church, Joseph Smith applied for membership in the local Methodist Church. They have his application on file in upstate New York. So anyway, other members of his family joined the Presbyterians. So apparently he wasn't doing a very good job of listening to God, at least 8 years later. And contemporaries of Smith consistently described him as something of a confidence man. Those whose chief source of income was hiring out to local farmers to help them find buried treasures in their yards by use of folk magic and what they used to call in the old days seer stones. He would take a seer stone, put it in his hat, and he would have visions of where the treasures were hidden in their fields, and they would pay them, and they would be out of town before he could make it. He was actually tried in 1826, there are court records, on a charge of money digging. In other words, he was tricking people into this with a seer stone. By the way, the Uman and the Thummim, how he translated the golden plates, he put the Uman and the Thummim inside